in the spirit of taking steps, the first critical choice I made on my journey was to make a first choice. So for me, that was picking up the phone when my sister called, which was profound. But since then, I've made practical first choices. Will you share with us a first choice that you made that you know impacted your journey to enduring success?
So I thought about this and I thought there was one moment, I think I shared that with you, but then kind of reflecting, I think there were actually two. The first one is that I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer from like age 8. And I stuck with that. I doubled down when my parents said, you know what, most women lawyers here, like you argue so much and you could be a lawyer. And so my parents were like, you might as well get paid for all this arguing you're doing. And so I got that idea in my head. And then I watched Erin Brockovich and saw that he was making an impact. And it's funny because when I was 8, I didn't know this, but I ended up being a single mom and, kind of going through things that she went through, like bringing your kids into the office and like staying up late nights and doing all kinds of crazy things. But I think my commitment to that really helped me through a lot of my most trying times in my life. Because I would reflect back and it's like, this is what I wanted to do. I can do it. Like I would keep repeating that to myself. And that's how I made it through so many difficulties, adversities. But I think you and I have a similarity in that I also had a very dramatic time in my life where I had to make like that decision that night. For me, it was leaving a toxic relationship with my daughter's father. I was newly 18 and my ex was 24. And kind of a little bit of a backstory, I grew up in a household where my mom was very young when she had us. She was there for us, but she was going through a lot of her own stuff with like depression and anxiety. And then on my dad's side, he was very much like militaristic and perfectionist, and you had to get straight A's and you had to be the best in basketball and all of these things. And I would never meet his standard of approval. Between the two of them, I really struggled with self-worth, anxiety, depression. And so when I was 17, I ended up meeting my daughter's father, who was 24, promised me the world, a family, unconditional love, all the things I was seeking for at 17 because of my background. And so I ended up moving in with him and his family, and he actually ended up getting into drugs right after my daughter was born. And so really wasn't home, was out doing different things with different people that he shouldn't have. And so I got to the point where my daughter was 3 months, where I was ready to go back to work because I had taken a couple months off. And I graduated from high school in June on the 17th, had my daughter June 20th, like literally walked across the stage. And then they were like, wow, not have this baby on the stage. Like you're very far along. And so I had her 3 days later and then had the summer off and then started at Montgomery County Community College in September. So when she was 3 months old, I was taking full-time classes and I was just miserable at his house. His mom was an enabler. I was going through, postpartum depression, also 18 years old, trying to figure this all out with not any family support at that time because we were estranged after I got pregnant. We were even more estranged.
Wow.
My
so
family.
You did not have contact with your parents or they were not there helping you in a positive way.
Right. I didn't really have contact with my dad, and my mom was going kind of through her own like breakup from her fiance. And so I talked to her every once in a while, but I didn't have that support. And then his family was very much like, you need to stay with him, even though he's doing all this stuff, even though he's not home often and being supportive, like you can't leave him in his time of need. And so, I was feeling guilty, but I was just so miserable and my mental health was not doing well. And so I had a friend that I actually lived with in high school for a little bit of time before I had my daughter. And she said, you know what, if you can get yourself out of that situation, you can stay with us here. We don't have much, but we'll make it work. And so that was, I think, September of 2009, because my daughter was 3 months old. And I just remember I didn't have anything. I was literally living in his house with his parents and I had some clothes. He had a crib and a diaper bag. And so I threw my clothes in a duffel bag. I packed her diaper bag and I threw it all in my 93 old Cutlass Supreme that was barely functioning at the time. And I remember it was like almost like one of those movies where, it's raining, it's dark, I'm making this decision. I pack her up, and we drive to my friend's house. And when we get there, she has a double bed, and she takes one mattress off, and that's my mattress. And then we have one of those aerobic exercise steps that we flip
Yes.
over, and
Yes.
we pad with blankets for my daughter. And that's her little, because I didn't have a crib, I didn't have a pack and play. I had to leave all of that behind. And so we just made it work. And I started working overnight at Wawa because at 18, I was still going to school, but I couldn't afford childcare. So her mother would watch my daughter overnight while I worked the night shift at Wawa. And then at 6 a.m. when I walked through the door, would hand my daughter back over, who was not ready for a nap at that point when I
Oh
was
God. Right.
exhausted from working an
Yeah.
overnight shift.
Little 3-month-old Alana didn't understand
Yeah.
how to cooperate in this situation.
No, not at all. And we made that work for a year. My friend's mom would stay up with her. Um, I would come and watch her, like play with her, interact with her during her nap times. I would do my homework from the community college. Then I'd go to bed at like 8 or 9 when my friend's mom was ready to take her back, and sleep for a few hours so I could be up for my 11 o'clock shift at Wawa. And so I'm not sure, looking back, I'm not sure how we made it work for as long as we did. It was survival mode, but yeah, that's what we did for the first year of her life until she could get to daycare.
Oh my, I mean, so I am so appreciative that you gave me more details around the first choice because, well, maybe a couple things that come to my mind. One is your strength, your inner strength. Any first choice sometimes is difficult to make. That's why people stay stuck. You know, it's like people say, don't make the choice because of all the reasons that we know that makes it so hard. Yours was especially difficult to make that choice, yet you did.
Yeah.
Is there even a memory or being cognizant of that? I know it's hard, but I am doing this and I'm doing this now. Or did you just were you cognizant of the difficulty of it and but you did it anyways? What made you not stay stuck is going to be my question. Where countless stories are the opposite.
I think a couple of things. I think I shared this with you on Friday, but some of my favorite lyrics from Tracy Chapman are, "You can either leave tonight or live and die this way." And it's funny because I did think of that. I was thinking, like, what does this look like in 5 years? Am I going to be proud to tell my daughter that I stayed somewhere where I'm not being valued? I am in really bad, like, mental health. And knowing my ex, I knew that I probably wouldn't have stayed in school, and I probably wouldn't have aspired to become a lawyer because, he was really comfortable. And after a while, I think he was a little intimidated by the fact that I was, trying to make more of myself, because he dropped out of high school. He had been in and out of rehab. Before I met him, I didn't know that at the time. He was doing landscaping, but there were a lot of times when he was like, why don't you just skip class or skip this assignment so we could do this? And I could feel my resolve kind of fading. And I think, again, going back to the very first choice of becoming a lawyer, that was always what was in my mind. I was like, this is what I have to do. And I was fortunate. My grandparents told me when I was really young, if you want to get out of your situation, like, school is the answer. That'll get you out of poverty. That'll get you out of, the generational trauma. Like, you can set yourself up, but it's going to take sacrifice. It's not going to be easy, but it's delayed gratification, and you will get the benefits from that. And so I had all of that in my mind when I was making this choice. I knew it was going to be hard. I will say that I watched my dad. My dad was a single dad and really did raise us for a majority of my life. He worked 2 and 3 jobs. And so, I saw that he could do it, and it wasn't easy, but it was doable. And he had 3 of us. So I figured if he could do 3 of us and we were all 2 years apart, then I could probably do 1. And then also from my parents, after I had my daughter, even though we weren't very close at that point, they did say, we wish we would have stayed in school. They did drop out when they had me. I was unplanned, and my mom was 20. I think my dad was 27, but they had both left school, and they said, you know what, it's so much harder when you wait, and it's doable. You can wait till your kids are grown and graduated, but 1, you've been out of it for so long, and 2, you like the status quo, or it's easier to stay in the status quo than to kind of break it. So with all of that in my mind, I knew that if I was going to be able to become a lawyer and go back to school and be successful, that the only way I could do that was to kind of cut off where my situation was and to start new. Because I saw what the writing was on the wall if I stayed with my ex. And
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I will force myself to move forward in this interview and keep going, but I don't want to underserve. I don't know what the right word is. The strength of your awareness that it was the first choice when you were 8 years old that I am going to be an attorney, with the resolve of the strength that shines through you, which then led you to this next critical choice that has changed Alana's life forever. That second first choice has created a generational shift and change and transformation that as you know, hits me like a ton of bricks. The last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to move us to the second critical choice, is about your friend and your friend's mom, who you stayed with for a year. So, I don't know if everybody needs a hero. I suspect that most people at some time in their life do, but I don't know that everybody needs a hero, but I know that anyone can be a hero.
Yeah.
And your friend and her mom are the heroes. They are a hero in the story. Like my sister was a hero in my story. You chose to leave. They chose to open up their doors. And so to them.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I didn't really have anywhere else to go, and it was a lot. I mean, she was basically the parent. She supplemented my journey as a parent because she was able to be there at night. And I do have a lot of people throughout my story that did what they thought was seemingly small, but really helped join my village and help me take care of Alana and just keep going. And so I'm so blessed to say that I've had.
And I bet that drives some of your inner desire to mentor others through their journey in small but meaningful ways. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast. Or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.